Welcome to another edition of the MMA Vivisection. I'm Zane Simon of Bloody Elbow, joined by Connor Rebish, also of Bloody Elbow. And we are here to talk about this UFC Salt Lake fight card coming up here, which is basically trash if you are a casual fight fan looking for something more than watching Yair Rodríguez fight. But super fun and awesome trash if you are a hardcore fight fan looking for something to do on a Saturday night.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun card. It's one that you can go into this one, take our word for it. If you don't know who any of these people are, you will enjoy almost all of the fights.
Yeah, I'm looking up and down this card for basically the only slow points I see on this card, which we'll get to obviously in more depth, are the Kawajiri fight and the versus Cub Swanson, and the Leites fight versus Chris Camozzi, and that's really predicated on Kawajiri and Leites winning, like the boringness of those fights. If Cub Swanson is winning or Chris Camozzi is winning, those should be a thrill a minute. So otherwise, I don't see a fight on this where I'm like, nah, that's just going to be a terrible grind.
Yeah, looks good. I'm excited about it. I didn't expect to be. Even for me, like as a hardcore fan, I saw Fight Night Rodríguez versus Caceres. I'm like, that's the main event, really? But the whole card is filled out really nicely. So I'm really not upset about this one.
No, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to live tweeting it because I know I'll just be like, oh my God, a whole bunch. And it may be sloppy. It may not. We may get a couple of like that Ryan Benoit, Freddie Serrano fight. Like, I don't know if you watched that.
Which I described as the first heavyweight fight in UFC flyweight history.
Yeah, but that fight was terrible, but fun as shit to watch.
Sure.
Like, it was super fun for a terrible fight. We might get a little of that on this card, but that's not the worst thing in the world. Like, no. Really bizarre, weird fights that don't show a lot of skill but show a lot of weirdness can be great fun. So on that note, we're going to dive into the first fight here. Chase Sherman versus Justin Ledet. Perhaps a fitting entry for that bridge. So Connor, why don't you take the lead on this?
Two guys that are strikers and heavyweight debutantes. The real story here, I think, is that Justin Ledet is much smaller than Chase Sherman. He is normally a light heavyweight, and Chase Sherman's a fairly decent-sized heavyweight. But in the style of fighting that Chase Sherman chooses, which is mostly boxing, stand-up, I think Ledet has an edge there. Ledet has professional boxing experience. He's got quick hands. He throws in combination. He's not bad in the and with his takedown defense if Sherman does try to use that range to press his size advantage. So I think Ledet is probably going to have a difficult first round, back and forth, but I think he will take over as the fight goes on and win an attritive third round TKO.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things for me going on there that, first of all, I'm not actually sure that Ledet will be smaller because I don't know if you saw any of his boxing footage from the time that he's barely fought in MMA in like the past 3 years. He came back for one fight and got a UFC contract off it. But if you looked at his boxing footage over that span, he bulked up a lot. Like, he put on serious weight. And unfortunately, I'm also kind of thinking he may have damaged his style because of it. Because when he was thinner, when he was a light heavyweight and he was this kind of skinny guy, he had this very high movement, high output pocket boxing style that, he didn't have great takedown defense or some of those other things, but it was still made him a fun, dangerous fighter. But watching him box as a heavyweight, he's very much this like plodding, slow-footed kind of take a few punches to deliver a few punches fighter. And Sherman, as a converted former college football player, he kind of reminds me of Brian Stan. And he's a lot more springy on his feet. He's still learning all the basics and the fundamentals of the game, and he's definitely primarily a boxer, but I feel like he might have the fleetness of foot to just kind of fluster Leites a lot and be able to hit a takedown when Leites starts to overreach himself, and maybe hit a reactive takedown or two, and if he can do that, just beat him up from top control.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna take Sherman by ground and pound TKO, but either one is highly, like, it's not a fight. It's a heavyweight fight. Don't pick it.
Do we know what Leites weighed in for in his last fight?
Let's see.
It was at Legacy. The Sherdog lists him at 203, though I have a feeling that's quite a bit older.
Yeah, that's definitely older. I'm going back. I mean, it's check. Tapology always has the weights listed, the specific fight-to-fight weights. Okay, they usually do. They don't in this case. I
thought he still looked okay. He still looked pretty live to me in the fight with Bryce Ratani Koe in Legacy, which I think was his last one. But your point stands.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I'm going to trust Chase Sherman as the more. I feel like his style is a more natural fit for long-term success, and I don't know. I don't trust Leites. At least what I saw as a heavier boxing style. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know that I actually got to see his fight against Bryce Ratani Koe.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot happening there. It ended in an eye poke, but the like minute and 8 seconds.
Okay, that's right. It was only okay. So yeah, no, I remember that now. Never mind. So yes, I didn't draw anything off it because I forgot it lasted a minute and a half.
Yeah.
All right. Odds on that fight are Justin Leites is the favorite, -140 to -160. Chase Sherman, the underdog, +138 to +115. I don't have any real problem with that. It should just be a toss-up either way.
I don't see any value there, to be honest, just because.
No. Don't bet on heavyweight fights, basically.
Especially not heavyweight curtain jerkers.
I would say, too, one small note is that Sherman's only lost to Alex Nicholson. Like, he was handing Nicholson his ass in that fight before Nicholson was like, oh, spinning back fist, and knocked him out.
That's Alex Nicholson, man. That's his thing. Yeah.
It's just like, I'll just throw some random trash at you, and because I'm a good athlete with power, that'll translate. So anyway, I have a little bit of faith in Sherman to be tough enough to get a takedown and pound Leites out. Anyway, that brings us to a much better fight: Cub Swanson, Tatsuya Kawajiri, and I'm really interested in this fight because I think this is a good test to me, a slightly better test maybe than the Hakron Diaz fight, to see exactly where Cub Swanson's at. Cub Swanson really handled Hakron Diaz, but Hakron Diaz is he's the kind of fighter that elite fighters just handle. Like, he's really too patient for his own good. Like, he really wants to counterfight but doesn't counterfight. So he's just going to sit there and watch you and let you hit him a bunch and then not come back with anything. It was a great way for Cub Swanson to show off his skill. Just a perfect kind of like, hey, Cub Swanson, do you still have anything left in the tank? Good. This guy's going to sit here and let you punch him for 3 rounds. I'm still picking Swanson here because Kawajiri's stand-up, he's willing to strike and he's able to be outstruck by Clay Guida. So my faith in Tatsuya Kawajiri to handle the striking well is not high, and I feel like Cub Swanson still has it in him to stay on the outside and to stay light on his feet and to keep range, and Kawajiri just doesn't have the ability to really challenge him there. Kawajiri's striking is not good, and he's willing to do it, and that's kind of the basis for me picking Cub Swanson here.
Yeah, Kawajiri is my mic on the right setting?
I think so.
Okay. Kawajiri is very, very old school in his approach. He has been doing it for a long time. I think it's a great testament to how effective his grappling is, that he is still winning fights at, 37, 38 years old, despite needing to out-grapple every opponent he faces. There is no other way that Kawajiri wins fights, unless you look at the time he knocked out the kickboxer in his K1 debut.
There's always a chance for a fluke, but largely no.
Yeah, and that kind of game, I just don't see it working against Swanson. Kawajiri's big and strong. He is very, very skilled on the ground. If this were a grappling match, I think he would stand a very good chance of beating Swanson. But Swanson is no scrub with his jiu-jitsu. He has solid takedown defense. One of the biggest takeaways for me from the Frankie Edgar fight was how good Cub Swanson was at stopping the takedowns in the early going of that fight. He looked really solid, and it took a really layered approach to wrestling and boxing for Frankie Edgar to consistently get him down. Kawajiri doesn't have that. He tends to dive in on takedowns. He's open to be countered when he does. Swanson's always been this guy who kind of flits between being a consistent fighter. He is the crossroads between process and dynamicism. Sometimes he's a great boxer. Sometimes he's a guy who throws cartwheel kicks every 2 seconds. But he does both of those things well enough to win fights of this type. So I think Cub Swanson's going to beat Kawajiri, and I kind of think it might be a late TKO because the two losses have made it easy to forget that Cub Swanson was knocking everybody out, and it just took a couple of bad style matchups for that to stop. I think with another favorable style matchup, he's the kind of guy who can make a big moment out of nothing. He hurt Hakran Diaz badly twice in their fight. I think Kawajiri's more hittable and probably more fragile at this point.
Yeah, it's also one of the things that really struck me is going back and watching Kawajiri's fight against Dennis Bermudez was just Dennis Bermudez did all the engaging in that grappling battle. Kawajiri to start out was very much like, oh, I'll kickbox with you and try and land my shots and do whatever. And it's just like Bermudez gave away around doing his, really engaging in a wrestling battle. But Cub Swanson won't give away that round.
He's not going to go in there and make the fight hard on himself by clinching with Kawajiri.
Exactly. And so that really gives me less of a shot of Kawajiri taking over. Odds on this fight, Cub Swanson is a heavy favorite, -360 to -400. Kawajiri, the underdog, +336 to +250. Now, I do want to say, I don't know that those odds are wrong, but I feel like Kawajiri has a better shot than that, maybe slightly, because he is so tough and he's so good at what he does. And Cub Swanson has been willing to just kind of engage everywhere in the past.
He could get the kind of submission that Ricardo Lamas got on Cub Swanson in his UFC debut. It's certainly a distinct possibility with a grappler of Kawajiri's caliber.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm not going to be like, so you should bet on Tatsuya Kawajiri. It's a bad style matchup for him.
Yeah,
and it makes sense that the odds wouldn't be very close. That brings us to our first FS1 prelim, and I am a little jealous that you get to talk about this first, but go ahead. Teruto Ishihara versus Horacio Gutierrez.
People have fallen in love with Teruto Ishihara just by being like, Teruto Ishihara is Japan's idea of what Black Americans are like. He is like such a strange, bitches, money, like that, but with a Japanese accent. It's just very charmingly weird. Yeah, it's very charmingly weird. And in the meantime, he's a very exciting fighter. He had a tooth and nail back and forth fight that I think a lot of people could have easily given to him with Hirota in his UFC debut. Longtime veteran, no shame in that. He absolutely demolished Julian Erosa in his second UFC fight. Now he gets what feels like kind of a step back, but Horacio Gutierrez is a fighter whose style is very similar to Ishihara's. He is a powerful, lunging boxer puncher type. His problem in this matchup, I think, is that he tends to wait a little too much. Gutierrez is not as confident in his power, not as confident in his timing. Ishihara has that kind of Conor McGregor feeling where he knows when you're in range, he knows how to make it timing awkward, and he will lunge across open space with no doubts that he's about to hit you with his left hand. Or like Kyoji Horiguchi is very similar. He's got a good feeling for wrist rhythm and distance. And Gutierrez, I don't think, has that confidence yet, which is understandable. He's 2-2 as a fighter. He doesn't have a ton of experience, but the fact that he tends to hang back and look for counters, yes, Ishihara can certainly be countered, but he seems to be very durable, and he will be the one attacking and landing more. So I think Ishihara will finish him. I could see either a decision or a knockout. Because it's Ishihara, and I'd love to see him get another knockout, I'm going to say KO in round 2.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I agree with most of that. I don't know if I have a slightly different read on it, but I think one of the big things I've seen too with this that makes me a little more willing to pick Ishihara even still is that Ishihara, because he has that kind of natural timing and confidence, he's also a much better, more trustworthy counterpuncher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you try to swarm him, he will come back with a really stiff power shot that has can like really have stopping power in just one shot.
Mm-hmm.
And Gutierrez is willing to lead without a lot of form. Like, he's got a lot of speed and power in his strikes, but he's very willing to just wind up and try and snap off a hard kick without any setup, or just throw, and throw not even the most confident, like, lead 1-2 to try and get somebody into brawling with him a little more and get his counters going.
Maybe what I remember most is how shy he became in his fight with Enrique Barzola when he was being taken down.
Yeah, because early he's sort of very willing to like pop a couple of short shots out there, and the power, all of his confident power is in his kicking game.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's he will wind up on power strikes, but it also makes it hard for him to land those counters as power strikes or as power punches. And when he leads, he's willing to lead, but he doesn't do it confidently. And I think Ishihara can really capitalize on that if he's throwing out like a little 1-2. Ishihara can really time that well.
Gutierrez to me is like a really raw Michael McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really a good style to have. Like, if you're a rawer version of McDonald who seems to be falling by the wayside, then,
He also reminds me a bit of, like, Joey Gomez and the same kind of things I remember talking about with, like, the John Lineker fight. Was it? Wait, no, not Joey Gomez. Who was it that fought John Lineker?
Rob Font.
Rob Font. Where, like, Rob Font being further along, but it was like, watching that is like, well, Rob Font tends to not really sit down on his combinations very well when he's leading, and it really sets him up to not be able to put any fear in somebody like Lineker to just
which
march
isn't
in.
To say, by the way, that like Gutierrez is, I think, almost, if not as big a puncher as Ishihara. Like, it wouldn't be a massive shock to see Ishihara get knocked out in this fight.
Yeah.
Both these guys are very powerful. It wouldn't even be a massive shock to see Ishihara get really tired in the third round and get chewed up by leg kicks and at least lose the third round. But there's no reason to believe in Gutierrez as a fighter yet.
If you're picking who's got the better puncher's chance, it feels like Ishihara has the better puncher's chance.
For sure.
But they both have that one-shot stopping power. So it should be a fun fight, because, like I say, when you got two guys that hit hard, and Gutierrez especially, who's very willing to kind of tentatively lead in his striking, that makes for a really fun fight. Better than two counter fighters who hit hard and are just. I
think it may turn into more of that as the fight goes on, because if he reacts to Ishihara's counters the same way that he did to the counter takedowns at Barzola, then we may have a bit of a staring contest, and then I think it may turn into the fight that my initial read said it would be. Yeah. Ishihara being the one more capable of landing leads at range.
Yeah, more capable of pot shotting at that point because he has the confidence to just be like, yeah, I can just dive in with the lead jab, stiff jab, and then duck out, and it'll be fine.
Yep.
And odds on this, Ishihara is the big favorite, minus 217 to minus 240. Horacio Gutierrez, chewing that name, plus 207 to plus 175 as the underdog. I think that's fair. Sure. They're both raw. They both have power. Ishihara is further along. He deserves to be the favorite, but there's no reason to just be like, oh, it's Money in the Bank. You know, this isn't the same stylistic layup that Julian Erosa was when people were picking Erosa to beat Ishihara. And I was like, this is a really big setup fight for Ishihara.
Would you tell me what the odds are on this fight going over a certain distance? What is the line there?
Let's see.
Going past a certain time, I mean?
There is no past a certain. Oh, no, yeah, there is. Over 1.5 rounds is minus 155 to minus 185. I
was going to say, if those were underdog odds, you might take that because the feeling might be that these guys are going to destroy each other. Someone's getting knocked out early.
Yeah.
And Gutierrez might become shy once he gets tagged, and then we have a pot shotting contest.
True.
At minus 115, I'm not sure if it's that likely.
True. Interestingly, Ishihara wins inside the distance or not inside the distance, not Ishihara inside the distance. Gutierrez wins inside the distance. Are both underdog, or rather both favorite odds. It's minus 105 Ishihara inside the distance, minus 135 anything other than Ishihara inside the distance.
So just don't even bet on this one. I don't really see a ton of value.
Don't bet on it. The odds feel like they're well set, and there's enough stopping power on both sides to make it questionable. That brings us to lightweight bout between newcomers David Tamer versus Jason Novelli.
Tamer has had one UFC fight. He beat the hell out of Martin Swanson in his debut.
Is that... Are you sure that's not the other Tamer? Or am I thinking incorrectly? I thought there's... Okay, no, that's right. There's a brother who hasn't been signed yet of David Tamer. So, never mind. Totally different thing. I was getting sidetracked. Yeah, okay, I remember much better. Yeah. Tamer beat the hell out of Martin Swanson in an impressive fight. I am actually going to pick Jason Novelli in this fight.
Ooh.
And I'm going to do it because I could easily see this being a kickboxing match in 4-ounce gloves. If it's a kickboxing match in 4-ounce gloves, I think it's a toss-up that Tamer could easily win. Novelli has this thing where he's a much better leading striker than he is a counter striker. But he often wants to start out fights being a counter striker, and he'll just kind of sit out at range for a while. And when he does that, he'll just kind of wait and get hit with stuff and not really do the best job. And then it's like he flips a switch. He's like, oh, I should actually start leading in this fight. And when he leads, he actually does a much better job stepping into the pocket and creating really good, solid combination striking offense. And I think that he does a good job even doing it while being a fundamentally sound, reasonably sound defensive fighter. So I'm not sure that he can't, like, I don't think that he will just get blown out by Tamer standing. And I could easily see him at some point deciding that he needs to start hitting takedowns and outwork Tamer on the ground. And that's why I'm picking him in this, is that I think he's got the more nuanced wrestling and grappling game. He's an over-aggressive grappler who tends to lose positions and can, like, overrun himself there. But I still think he's much better there than David Tamer, who really is just a kickboxer in 4-ounce gloves.
I think that Jason Novelli, to me, is like a much less developed version of Yair Rodríguez, our main eventer. He is a strong grappler with a good counter takedown game, and he relies pretty heavily on his kicks at range. That's a style that demands a lot of athleticism to work. Novelli does seem to be a very solid athlete, but I think that David Tamer is the style of fighter that will eventually undo Yair Rodríguez, and that's why I think he will beat Jason Novelli. I think Tamor has the pocket boxing, the countering ability, the footwork, and the movement. He has a mastery of distance, angle, and position that Novelli doesn't have. And we also saw, especially in Tamor's debut, how comfortable he was catching the kicks of Martin Swanson. He was so comfortable catching and countering either with kicks and knees of his own, with punches, and even at times with takedown attempts. I don't know how well advised that would be against Novelli, but a reactive double here and there has not always been a bad thing for a striker against a grappler to kind of put your stamp on every phase as the fight plays out. So I think David Tamor is going to get a unanimous decision over Jason Novelli. The most important thing I learned watching Jason Novelli's fights and researching for this is that Super Fight League isn't so ridiculous anymore.
Yeah, it's not ridiculous anymore because they got bought out by an American promotion and they run in the Northwest. So it's just they bought the name for a Northwest promotion to use. Yeah, it's no longer the Indian.
That is so strange.
Like it's in Tacoma. It's like 5 miles south, like 20 miles south of me.
I didn't know that.
And it's not ridiculous anymore, but it's just also, it doesn't have any of the curbside appeal that it used to.
No, that is for damn sure.
Yeah, I think it's just one of the, I don't know. I don't trust enough of the rest of Tamor's game. And I think Swanson was really in the same way as Julian Erosa versus Teruto Ishihara was such a stylistic layup for Teruto Ishihara. I think that Martin Swanson fight was really a stylistic layup for David Tamor. It's
sure. Tamor does have very solid grappling training partners though. He's over at All Stars.
Yeah.
He's got Reza Madadi, other people around his size. I mean, Sweden is well known for their wrestlers. I think he's not lacking in that area.
I'm not saying he's lacking. I just don't. I think that Novelli can be enough of a speed change at times while still hanging with him where Tamor's best. I don't see Tamor yet as just an absolutely kind of conquering striker for other strikers. I think he's good and sharp, but I don't think it's Money in the Bank, David Tamor. So. That's my feeling is that it's Novelli can hang, and if he can hang, he can then kind of I guess I would see this kind of a more athletic version of James Krause versus Shane Campbell, where it was Krause can hang with Campbell striking and just walk through all of his shots in that case. And then Krause was the better. I don't know. Krause was that was just a weird fight when I think about it. Never mind. I'm trying to think Krause was the better wrestler, but then Campbell really toughed through it all late and took over with the wrestling game. And it's just
So what's going to happen is David Tamor is going to out-wrestle Jason Novelli, who will completely outbox him at range.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows?
I think that it's just... I have a feeling this is going to be kind of a weird fight, and I'm picking Novelli to be able to do more with transition opportunities. If it's weird, if it's just a kickboxing match with 4-ounce gloves, then I think it's a coin toss. But perhaps in Tamor's favor. The odds on this: Tamor is the favorite, -125 to -145. Novelli, the underdog, +125 down to -105. So really tight odds on this. I'm fine with that. I think the biggest problem for me I see is if Novelli gets stuck in a range kickboxing match, that's where he's especially ill-suited. His range kickboxing is much less well-developed than he wants it to be. He's much better when he gets inside and can work a clinch and inside boxing game. So I don't know. There's no real value in that fight. It's incredibly tight to me. If you're confident in David Tamor, then getting him at -125 might be solid. But I don't know. That brings us to a heavyweight bout between Viktor Pešta and Marcin Tybura.
You know what this card really needs at this point is to have some heavyweights fight at 4,500 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
We really need that. I think
mean,
this. Go on.
We had Chase Sherman and Justin Ledet early, and those guys don't have hardly any experience or real comprehensive MMA training. So let's get in some guys who do have some experience in comprehensive MMA training and who may not have that much elite athleticism. Or in Pesta's case, do not have maybe a lot of the mechanics.
Right. This is a weird one. I think both the styles are less fun than Sherman and Ledet, which is why I didn't have an immediate depressing tone when that fight came on. Pešta has shown that he is tough and durable. That is why he beat Konstantin Arokin in large part, and he came pretty close to beating Derek Lewis when they fought. Lewis was just the calmer fighter on the ground, and Pešta worked too hard trying to get him there. But Pešta has definitely shown that he has potential to be a solid heavyweight someday. He's still very young. I think he is the youngest heavyweight on the UFC's roster right now. And he's training with the Black Zillions now, which might be good for him. Henry Hooft, not a great corner man, but very, very good at teaching technique in the gym. So Pešta might come in here with some improved technique. You never know. Pešta is athletic enough that at this point in his career, it's very difficult to count on what he will look like in his next fight, especially because as a young fighter who famously had his own website not long ago, like advertising him as a training partner that he would train for food. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
But he's been all over the place, and so he's still trying to find a fit for himself. Like Curtis Blades is jumping from gym to gym as well. It's tough for these guys to find a gym where they can really specialize as good heavyweights. And Marcin Tybura came into the UFC and kind of had a very disappointing fight with Timothy Johnson. Very proud to have picked that one correctly, because Marcin Tybura is a guy whose record, I think, speaks of his record sells him better than his fights do. If you watch his fights, Tybura, being a heavyweight, he has two of the essential ingredients. He is extremely tough and durable, and he is a very good finisher. And so he has beaten a lot of guys in fights that he was otherwise losing. And he almost did so against Johnson. He had a pretty good third round and started to let his hands go. But his game just doesn't have a lot of cohesion to it. There is not, you never look at Marcin Tybura and think he knows exactly what he's doing in this fight. He's just waiting for an opportunity to finish you. And I think that's going to be tough against Pešta. And Tybura feels like the guy I'm supposed to pick, but I'm going to pick Viktor Pešta. I think he is going to make this an extremely slow and dull fight, hold Tybura against the fence. I think his biggest advantage I see for him here, aside from the fact that he is tougher than a lot of the guys that Tybura has finished in the past, is that he's used to fighting in a cage. And I think that gave Tybura a lot of problems in his fight with Johnson, because being an M1 guy, his whole career was built in the ring. So I think Viktor Pešta is going to hold him against the fence, and both of them are going to gas by the middle of round 2, and it's going to be awful and hilarious, and Viktor Pešta will win a split decision.
Yeah, I will say in my I don't see any really truly boring fights on this card. I somehow totally breezed over that. It's probably because this fight has potential to be so boring that it just blocked from my vision.
Sure, it could be like Dan Kelly versus Patrick Walsh, like a truly amazing trash fire of a fight.
That would be beautiful if it was like that. I want to think that it's like those sunglasses from Hitchhiker's Guide that immediately turn black if danger approaches. You know?
Yeah.
I think that's what happened to me here.
It's just blinded you from this.
Yeah, it's just no, you're not going to see that fight. But I guess the thing that's interesting to me here is that I'm not sure that Viktor Pešta is willing to cage grind. And that could make this a very interesting fight, because his game is very much when he's in the clinch, he is the most awkward range fighter to natural clinch fighter I have ever seen, or one of them, especially at heavyweight. He's literally one of those dudes where he will just be throwing any limb he can at you across the cage. But the moment he can actually like touch you with something and get a hand on you locked in any way, his body language and his confidence and his fluidity immediately changes.
Well, he's a takedown machine.
Well, but more than that, he's also a really solid clinch. Like he uses knees in the clinch and he strikes in the clinch with just a lot more natural fluidity than he does at range in any way. And but he's a very, he's really focused on hitting takedowns. And because he's focused on either kind of creating instant offense in the clinch, I want to throw knees, I want to throw hooks or uppercuts, or I want to hit takedowns. I don't know if like how well he's going to be able to just hold Marcin Tybura down. Like maybe he can. Tybura is not a great grappler off his back. He's not exceptional, but he's a decent scrambler, and he's a very decent back take artist for the heavyweight division, especially for heavyweight. Like he's really more than anything, his best skill as a heavyweight is his ability to take the back and to turn that into a submission opportunity. Because I think kind of at a raw level, I expect Viktor Pešta to have enough of the athletic advantage to be the guy hitting the takedowns and kind of doing the bulk of the athlete work in this fight. And then it's just a question of, is Viktor Pesta's takedown game better, or is his grappling game good enough to stifle Tybura's? Because he's probably going to have to. And I don't know. I'm gonna side with you with Pešta on this one. I'm tired of being the dude who always believes that some random regional heavyweight is going to get much better than he is.
Yeah.
So.
And I have hopes, man. Training with Henry Hooft. I want to see Viktor Pešta comes in here and just kickboxes the pants off of Marcin Tybura. It'll be the greatest moment of my life.
I'm also very worried, though, about having Hooft, because I think it was with Vic last show that I talked about this. Maybe it was with you, but I think that the guys who get the best out of Hooft training are the guys who already were intensely successful in other combat sports. And so they have the natural confidence built into their game that they're like, I don't care if you try to tear me down the corner. I know I'm elite. Like I've been, you look at somebody like, Gilbert Burns. And Gilbert Burns was like a world-class grappler. And so if Hooft is like, you're trash and you're throwing it away, it's like, I am a world-class athlete. I am elite.
You mean because these are the guys who are immune to Hooft destroying their confidence on the stool?
Yeah. They've had enough confidence built into them through their athletic career, through another successful athletic career, that they know the confidence.
Someday that camp is going to be like, maybe Henry shouldn't be in the corner. We'll just have Henry hold pads and supervise sparring, but maybe in the corner we'll get somebody who makes our fighters feel good about themselves.
Yeah, and maybe even for guys like that, having a negative voice in the corner is really valuable. They'll be like, fuck you, I know I'm good. I can go out there and show I'm good. And that's maybe where you get the best out of it. But with a guy like Pešta, who really has no combat sports background before MMA, it could be a huge detriment. Like, it can be the kind of thing where you're like still trying to learn how you're trying to learn how to be a winning competitive athlete, and you have somebody in the corner who's like, you're trash. Like, shit, maybe I am.
But don't quit, though. That's the important thing.
Don't quit, trash.
Don't quit, you piece of shit.
So that really does worry me with a fighter like Viktor Pešta. Because I think that's something, too, that you see with somebody like Abel Trujillo or, who was the other? Sean Spencer. Guys who just kind of, Abel Trujillo had a wrestling background, but he wasn't like an amazing NCAA division national champion kind of wrestler. So guys who just kind of come into MMA like, this is where I'm going to be great. This is where I'm going to look to win.
What about Michael Johnson, though? He seems to deal with it okay.
Does he?
I think
Sometimes. Sometimes.
He's never like folded in a
Yeah.
fight since he's achieved his prime.
I suppose. Michael Johnson's still a little bit of a weird head case to me in ways, like getting sucked into the Diazing of Diaz and getting worked by in other things. I don't know. Anyway, we're starting to fly far afield here, so I don't want to do that. And my dog's about to go fucking nuts, so I'm gonna actually let you carry this quickly over to the next fight.
While you go kill the mailman. I got it. Welterweights, Court McGee versus Dominique Steele. I feel like I should announce ahead of time that I may have a bit of bias here. Dominique Steele's from my home city. I always enjoy rooting for people from my hometown. It didn't help me when I picked Matt Brown over Jake Ellenberger, but it is what it is. I think this is a fight between two very similar styles with very different athletic traits. Court McGee and Dominique Steele are both grinders in a way. They both press the pace. They both throw a decent amount of volume. McGee more than Steele. And they both dive on takedowns and do work in the clinch when they can. They're both guys very committed to just mixing it up and keeping up the work rate. But Court McGee does that in a sort of Michael Bisping way, where he is not that athletic in terms of explosiveness and speed and power and coordination. There's just not a lot of the signs of natural athleticism to Court McGee. And Dominique Steele, on the other hand, does seem to be pretty athletic. He's strong, he's powerful, he moves pretty quickly. He's not very light on his feet, but he is built like a tank and he kind of fights like one. He's his only the only real difference between styles here is that Court McGee is very durable and Dominique Steele is not. But I think this is one fight where Dominique Steele doesn't have to worry about that as much. Court McGee has not knocked anybody out since, 2009? He has not gotten a single knockout in the UFC as far as I can recall. He's not a powerful hitter. He puts on volume, but he doesn't tend to hurt people. And guys who are strong and athletic and do press the pace back, they tend to have a good showing against Court McGee. So I think Dominique Steele is going to take a decision here. By the way, I was very impressed by Steele in that fight with Danny Roberts. We both thought Roberts was going to run away with that, and Steele made it a really tough fight. I think a lot of people thought he won. I kind of felt like he won when I watched it.
Oh, just real quick, because I passed him over. I got to read back the odds on the last fight.
Oh, sorry.
Pešta, Marcin Tybura. Pešta is the underdog, plus 133 to plus 120. And Tybura, the favorite, minus 147 to minus 149, or to minus, to minus 160, minus 147 to minus 160. That might be some slightly decent odds on Pešta, but remember our old solid standby, do not bet on heavyweight fights. This has all the looks of a slow, close, grinding contest. And when you're picking who's the best heavyweight grappler, that's always like you're really entering a questionable area because it could be Ben Rothwell over Josh Barnett. You know?
Yep.
Like, just keep in mind for all we said on that fight, it can get weird in a hurry out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now going back, I'll admit when Dom Steele came to the UFC and I looked at his tape, I was really like, man, this dude's gonna have a lot of fights like that Zach Cummings fight. Like that was my thought. He's slow, he's very hittable, and he's very dependent on for somebody who doesn't dominate pocket striking exchanges, he's very dependent on pocket striking exchanges. Mm-hmm. But as he's gone on, like it's hard to remember then for as much experience as he had, he only started fighting in 2011 and he's still got some improving to do. And as he's gone on and as he's training at fighting at a higher level now, and it seems like maybe his training is improving over time, his pocket striking seems to be kind of snapping together, and it's taking much better advantage of that huge amount of natural power that he has, because it really is. He's got that weird strength where it's like none of it's really dynamic, but if you let him hurt you, then he's really, really strong. Like,
Yeah.
he's not the kind of dude that's going to fly across the cage with a jump knee or leap in with a hard right hand that nobody sees coming. But if you just let him get inside and hit you, he will hit you really hard.
Yep. Danny Roberts threw a kick in the opening seconds of their fight, and Steele just stood his ground and threw a 3-2 and almost took his head off his shoulders. Like, he knocked him right down.
And the part of this, I think, that especially makes me question picking McGee, because McGee could, if McGee can be durable enough, which he has been most of his career, he could just take a decision on work, especially if Steele starts to fade. If he can make Steele fade and just kind of wear his gas tank out, McGee has a very good chance of taking a decision as he takes over in later rounds. But that fight he had with Marcio Alejandro Jr. was really close. It was a close, ugly fight against somebody who is at like the very bottom end of the talent end of that division.
Someone who doesn't really belong in the UFC.
And who's not in the UFC anymore. And that really has me questioning whether or not McGee can take this. Like, I kind of feel like McGee is one of those fighters who not only did he have to he took 2 years off, but in that time sort of got eclipsed with a style that was already on the fringes of UFC success. Like, the new generation of fighters has kind of solved this, especially at lower weight. The lower you get, when you get below middleweight, a lot of them have a solution for the high volume, low power puncher. Like, you really need to be amazing at that skill, which very, very few fighters are. So,
agreed.
I'm leaning Steele on this too. I don't trust where McGee's at right now, and I don't trust his style to be as winning as it should be. On that note, Court McGee is the underdog, or is the favorite, decided favorite, -199 to -235. Dom Steele, the underdog, +180 to +155. And I think this is kind of, this to me is the first clear, betting opportunity.
This is the first surefire betting opportunity of the card.
Yeah.
I don't want to say not surefire, but the one that you should definitely take if you're considering betting.
Yeah, that's a point where you're like, as an underdog, Steele's got a real good chance against McGee, who has not looked, frankly, McGee has not looked really, really good since Dong Yang. Like, his decision win over Robert Whittaker is better in retrospect. Like, that's a better fight for him in retrospect, and Whittaker's developed a ton after that. But even that Josh Neer fight was like a really close, ugly fight.
Yeah, and he didn't really deserve the win over Whittaker either. It was a close one, It
was a really close one. So we're talking like the last really dominant performance of Court McGee is really like maybe Dong Yang, maybe like Ryan Jensen even. I don't remember the Yang fight, but it's been a while. Whittaker or McGee is kind of, he's been, like I say, he's a fighter whose style, even at its peak, was very much surviving on the fringes of UFC success.
Yep.
So,
in the words of Nickelback, it's been a while since Court McGee was really at the top of his game.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's stained, isn't it? I have my butt rock fans.
You know what? I'm not even gonna. No. We're just scrapping all that and moving on before
my butt rock was crossing lines there. I couldn't keep it all straight.
I really am not willing to engage in further in examining that line of thought. That brings us to the Fox Sports 1 main card and the opening bout: Danielle Taylor versus Maryna Moroz. And I'm fascinated by this fight, mostly because I expect Danielle Taylor to get absolutely whooped, and yet I'm really interested to see if she can avoid it, because Taylor is absolutely a top flight athletic prospect, But she's 5 feet tall. She's a 5-foot strawweight.
Yeah.
And she may be the one of the rare fighters in that division that has real legit one-punch knockout power. But she's 5 feet tall. Maryna Moroz is 7 inches taller than her.
Yeah.
And Moroz is one of the fighters too, where it's like not only is she way taller, but she's not going to give up anything in hand speed to Taylor. She'll probably give up something in foot speed, dynamic foot speed, but not in hand speed. And she's not giving up, and she has a big edge in pure boxing technique. And so I really feel like this is a fight where Moroz can just stay outside and pot shot Taylor, who's defensively very open, very, very open to being hit, tends to throw from the hip, tends to put her head back and chin up when she's throwing, and is just ripe to be picked off. And otherwise gets by on the fact that she hits harder and moves faster than most of her competition. But in the UFC, that's going to be a much thinner margin than it was regionally, where the athletes are a lot better. So I'm picking Moroz here. Feels pretty clear, but I'm interested to see what Taylor can do.
Yeah, Taylor's approach to fighting is a pretty sensible one. She doesn't want to be out-grappled, and she doesn't want to stand on the end of her opponent's punches, so she stays too far away for either of them to land and then tries to draw her opponent in and hit them when they overcommit. She tries to force them to take away their own reach advantage because everyone she fights has a reach advantage over her. But she doesn't have a lot of depth to back that up. She's not even as crafty at it as like Uriah Faber is. And Uriah Faber is nobody's idea of an amazing striker. He's still worlds beyond Taylor in terms of just the amount of sheer craftsmanship he has to his kickboxing. Taylor's pretty much power punches, alternating right, left, right, left, right, left, and the occasional reactive takedown, and that's kind of what she offers. And Moroz tends to get drawn into fights that don't favor her, but technically she's a better boxer, and she tends to win the fights even when they don't favor her, or at least compete. She's powerful. She throws good combinations. She's a little too willing to exchange, but other than that, I think she has the striking advantage and the grappling advantage. So I have to pick Moroz. I would love to be surprised by Taylor because, as you said, I think she's got a lot of athletic potential and she's very young, so she has time to develop. But for now, Moroz is definitely the clear pick.
It's the kind of signing that makes me wish that the UFC, or makes me hope the UFC is aiming for a atomweight division at some point.
Yeah.
Because like Sohee Ham, Danielle Taylor, Michelle Watterson, like they're getting a few of these fighters who are really fun, interesting action fighters and are just too small to compete with the elite talent at 115. Like I love Michelle Watterson. I do not see Michelle Watterson beating somebody like Valerie Letourneau. You know? Like the size difference is just too extreme.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
So,
and there are fighters to bring in too. It's not like there aren't good fighters at atomweight. There's Erica Tiburcio, Hamasaki, who beat Tiburcio. There's good fighters out there in Invicta and other organizations that could fill out that division.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see in the future. It's just, and signings like this could lead to it. It's just hard to see them. A lot of these women's really getting a good shot to compete at 115. The odds on that fight are Maryna Moroz is the big favorite, -240 to -280. And Danielle Taylor, the underdog, +231 down to +175. I would almost say Moroz is worth a bet at those odds because that's not as extreme as I would give.
I want to say it too, but I just have this picture in my head of Moroz just getting just destroyed with a counterpunch.
She's never been knocked out. I mean, that's
true.
There's that, but yeah, there is just.
She was hurt pretty bad by Letourneau.
Yeah, she got hurt by Letourneau, and Danielle Taylor, like I say, is one of the rare women in that division who's going to have the ability to knock somebody out with one shot. And at that point, especially like Moroz, she's 5'7", she's big, but she's very reedy. and she has that kind of readiness that really tends to lend itself to big one-punch overhand knockouts.
She has baby giraffe syndrome.
Yeah,
at some
bit of
point.
that. And she hasn't had it tested much because she actually hasn't fought any like short, big punchers at the UFC level yet. But other than Stanciu, who she just took down immediately and worked like a punch press. But that's, like I said, that's kind of also why I'm like, Moroz really lean into this pick. She should win. But Taylor's got the power. So I don't know. It's not a safe. It feels like a safe pick, but maybe it's not a safe pick. That brings us to the middleweight bout. Trevor Smith versus Joe Gigliotti. I believe it's you.
Joe Gigliotti is probably going to destroy Trevor Smith in the first minute because that's the kind of fight that Trevor Smith tends to lose. I like this matchup. It's a hell of a lot better than ones, and this gives me hope that maybe the UFC is going to adjust their approach under new ownership. Maybe they'll change how they deal with prospects. Although it's not looking good for Danielle Taylor below. But this is certainly better than like Matt Lopez versus Hani Yahya, because like Hani Yahya, you and I could both see how he could win that fight. And Trevor Smith, I can see, can make this fight tough, but I think his chances of beating Joe Gigliotti are a lot worse. He's not a powerful striker. His best areas are in the clinch and on the ground, where Gigliotti is both very strong and very technical. And he tends to get blown up in the first minute by really athletic, powerful, aggressive fighters. And that's Gigliotti. But if Gigliotti doesn't get that finish, he's in there with a more experienced guy who has fought a lot of tough competition for a long time. And so Smith is going to make him work and make him think and teach him some lessons while probably losing the fight. I do think the most likely result is a first-round KO or a knockdown into a submission for Joe Gigliotti.
This feels a bit like a two true, as you call it, the two true outcome fight, where Gigliotti either wins in really quickly and powerfully and impressively, or just loses a decision. Because Smith, a lot of his losses tend to be to big, powerful athletes. Thales Leites, Kyle Magalesh, John Vellante, and especially those Magalesh and Vellante losses, they show that you don't have to be that technical to beat him. If you're a big, powerful athlete, you can just be a big, powerful athlete.
He went to a split decision with Brian Houston.
I know, and that's both like the plus and the negative. There is that like Brian Houston, as a big, powerful athlete who's as inexperienced as Gigliotti, took him to a split decision, but Smith also did win that fight.
But Houston is 4-0 since that fight. A tiny part of me thought, while Phil McKenzie and I were doing the League of Extraordinary Journeymen for this card, I was like, is Trevor Smith out here destroying people's careers? Because everybody he beats retires or goes on a losing streak after he beats them. Or does that just say that Trevor Smith doesn't tend to beat very good fighters?
I think that's what it really says.
Could be either, but I tend to think that as well.
Yeah, Brian Houston, wow, he really just like...
I thought he had potential, man. I thought based on that fight, he looked like he could come back from the regional circuit, but he has not had a good run of it since losing to Hot Sauce.
Now, on the flip side of that, Gigliotti is coming out of Power MMA, which means he's got a very good camp behind him, very solid camp behind him. And, crap. And I really just... I'm picking Gigliotti because I really want to see a young middleweight win and do. It just feels like it's too long between middleweight prospects for me to not get excited about these guys. And Gigliotti looks super legit. Like his boxing, he reminds me as a striker of like Hector Lombard. And otherwise, he doesn't have Lombard's judo game behind it, but he's a much more aggressive grappler off a power takedown game than Lombard ever was. Lombard being much more of the, I will take you down with something amazing and then just kind of stall you out. Gigliotti's a very aggressive grappler with a powerful squeeze and he seems like he's got a well-rounded game that's really fitting together nicely.
He's just 22. He's at Power MMA. Things are in order for Gigliotti to be a good middleweight.
Yep. He needs better defense, especially closing into the pocket. He's got the problem that fire hydrant dudes have, which is I need to get into the pocket where my short arms can do damage. But getting there, I'm going to take big risks to do it. And he's going to have to solve that, get his timing down. That'll come with time. I don't think Smith is the kind of guy who can take advantage of that, though. I think Smith is going to give him the clinch and give him the pocket a lot. And in doing that, really let Gigliotti show off his power. So I'm picking Gigliotti here, but if Smith can wear him down, if he can't get the early finish, then Smith has... Smith is a very tough veteran fighter who has won at this level. So anyway, I'm picking him. The odds on that fight are Gigliotti is the favorite -130 to -149. Trevor Smith is the underdog +128 down to +110. I'm actually kind of surprised that Smith is the underdog here, just because Gigliotti is so raw, but I'm happy about it. I mean, we're both picking
Gigliotti inside the distance is +105. I don't think that's a bad bet.
Yeah. But with somebody as inexperienced as Gigliotti is, there's still every possibility he just throws this fight away.
Sure.
So something to watch out for, but I think he's as good as middleweight prospects get. Essentially, outside of the, oh my God, this guy could be a future Hall of Famer coming around, but he's the kind of guy I expect to absolutely be a top 10 middleweight down the line. And that brings us to a welterweight bout with Santiago Ponzinibbio and Zach Cummings. And I'm having trouble with this one.
Really?
I really want to pick the Pons, as it were, because I love him. I have come to love his fighting style, but he is still very hittable. Like, I was watching his fight with Court McGee, and Court McGee really touched him up a lot before he was able to find his rhythm and find his power counter and kickboxing game and knock McGee out. And Cummings is just too confident and too willing a pressure fighter for me to see that working against Cummings. Like, you can't give Cummings that kind of time. And if you do, he's probably going to knock you out, because Cummings has the same kind of power that Santiago Ponzinibbio has, and he's not unhittable. He's not a defensively great fighter, but he waits on opponents less. He gives them less opportunities to just take free shots at him. Ponzinibbio is very willing to, hands down, just kind of stalk forward and wait to see what you do in hopes that he can rip off an incredibly powerful counter. And while he does that, he'll eat shots, whereas Cummings is just like, okay, I'll just march in and knock you out with something. And I guess I have more trust in Cummings' pressure game than I do in Ponzinibbio's counter game in this fight. And so I'm picking Cummings, but both these dudes have a ton of power. And I do feel like Cummings is one of those dudes who's headed towards a sharp lesson in his career as he goes forward with a pressure game that is not really predicated on good technical offense or defense. So I'm picking Cummings, but
Zane, this one feels easier to me to pick. I'm also picking Cummings, and I think Cummings kind of has the solution to Ponzinibbio's style. Cummings he pressures pretty well, but I think even when he pressures, he's an aggressive counterpuncher. I think pretty much everything he does is based on the counter. He likes to force his opponent to lead. Sometimes he'll do that by pressuring. Sometimes he'll pull back and make them chase him. But he throws pretty good, tight combinations. He's weirdly difficult to hit cleanly and definitely durable enough to bear it when you do land. We saw that in his fight with Nicholas Dalby. He took a flush head kick in the third round and still won the round. So I think Ponzinibbio, I always like seeing Swarmer versus Counterpuncher, but I think Counterpuncher tends to beat Swarmer. And Ponzinibbio is going to be the more determined pressure fighter here. He likes to come forward. He throws more volume, but everything Ponzinibbio throws is power. It allows people to time him, and his defense is not that great, whether it's to counter punches and strikes or counter takedowns. I think Cummings has both options at his disposal. He's not an amazing takedown artist, but he has hit some good reactive doubles, and he's strong in the clinch. So if he fails on a takedown, he can still put in some work, neutralize you for a bit. He has proven to be a very capable counterpuncher. Ponzinibbio will probably hit him some. Ponzinibbio will almost certainly, I think Ponzinibbio will quite likely take a round, but I think that Cummings is going to be landing the bigger, cleaner shots and frustrating Ponzinibbio by being, again, weirdly difficult to hit clean.
I don't think this lasts a round.
Really?
Yeah, I think Cummings knocks Ponzinibbio out.
I will say, I think this has potential to be the most fun matchup on the card.
Yeah, I love the fight. I really do. And that's kind of why it's hard for me to pick, is because I love the fight and I want to see a lot of it. But I guess I would say, like, Cummings has I would say this. I think Cummings has a better feel for the natural rhythms of how a fight works. Whereas, even the fact that, like, he off balances himself when he throws strikes all the time. He comes, like, his defense is often like, put my chin up in the air and just lean back.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I say, his offense and his defense, neither of them are technically clean. But Ponzinibbio, even if he throws more volume at times, and even if he's more willing to lead at times, he's also, like, he just doesn't he is a great single track fighter who can easily be thrown off that track and does not have a great feel for how to, like, navigate a fight.
It's kind of endemic to their styles, right? Ponzinibbio is a pressure fighter. He forces things. He looks a little stiff, and he tries to force the same pace, whether it's working or not. Zach Cummings is a counterpuncher. He reacts, and he does it pretty well. So,
yeah, so I got to pick Cummings in that kind of fight, and obviously both guys have the power to easily KO each other. But Cummings has the better chin, so I trust him to be able to take a few shots and land the hard shots coming back at him. And like I said, I'm kind of picking him by first round TKO, or first round KO, even clean. Odds on this fight: Cummings is the underdog, plus 140 to plus 120. Ponzinibbio, the favorite, minus 144 down to minus 180. I think those should be flipped, frankly. I think there's value in Cummings there.
I got Cummings at plus 145 a few days ago. He's still floating around the same region in a lot of sites. I say go for him.
Yeah, like, he's really durable. I don't think Cummings has ever been finished, has he?
Don't think so.
He's been submitted once by Tim Kennedy early in his career. Oh, and by Gunnar Nelson.
Who I think he was beating.
Yeah. He's otherwise super durable, hits hard, is patient, and just has a good, solid style. He's his win over Dalby really shows that he's put the consistency in his game to beat better technical fighters, like people who have a level of technical consistency that he doesn't have. He has the consistency of approach to beat them. And Ponzinibbio, he's kind of like Dalby, but he hits harder and he's slower. And I don't think that hitting harder is going to make up for being slower. No. So, that takes us to another middleweight fight, in the League of Extraordinary Journeymen, Thales Leites versus Chris Camozzi.
This one's a winner. This is a fantastic matchup right here. Thales Leites needs to get back on the winning track. Chris Camozzi is, some would say, improbably on a 3-fight winning streak right now. Camozzi, I think, has made marked improvements. Leites' improvements, I think, have been shown recently to be a little bit hollow. His striking looked a lot better. But I think more than anything, it was his confidence that had improved. Leites was more comfortable going in there and just letting his hands go. And when it didn't work, he'd let him go harder and be more aggressive. And that, to his credit, allowed him to out-brawl Tim Boetsch, which not a lot of people can say they've done. It allowed him to knock out Francis Carmo. It allowed him to win a lot of good, impressive fights coming into his UFC return. But then two guys who just move and jab and work from distance nullified him. He had a few moments against Bisping. Fight was relatively close. He was completely flat against Mousasi. I think Camozzi's game is more like Mousasi's than it is Bisping's. He's a good distance fighter. He's got solid takedown defense, whereas Leites is not a very great wrestler. I think most likely this ends up being a striking battle. And Camozzi's gotten better defensively, both as a wrestler and a striker. He's got a good jab, good straight punches. He picks away with leg kicks. I think the statistic is that he has more landed leg kicks in the UFC middleweight history than anyone but Michael Bisping. Both of those seem like weird people to hold that title, but it just shows Camozzi and Bisping are the kind of people who pick away at range. And I think that picking, chipping kind of striking style is going to be kryptonite to Leites again, just like it was against Mousasi. So I am going with Chris Camozzi by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I'm of two minds here. One of them is I think if this is a kickboxing battle, I have zero doubt Chris Camozzi wins it. He not only is he durable as hell on the feet, just unbelievably durable, but he can set a pace for 3 rounds that most middleweights cannot match as a striker. And he's mean. Like, he has turned what used to just be angry aggression into consistent technical aggression over time. His experience has turned what used to just be kind of like the angry dude who just charged at you for 15 minutes into somebody who actually has like this consistent power knees and power clinch knees and kicks and just a good, strong, aggressive 15-minute approach built on being kind of a mean dude. However, losing to like Bruno Santos and Rafael Natal just a couple of years ago.
Hey, he should have beaten Rafael Natal.
I know he should have, but it still shows me that he has this ability to just kind of get shut down by the big athletic grappler who wants to try and find a way to shut him down.
His process is not quite perfect, and he is not dynamic at all.
No, he's not dynamic at all.
He's the crown prince of the high volume, low power kickboxers of this division behind Michael Bisping, and he has yet to break through the way Bisping has to turn that into a really dangerous style.
Yeah, and Thales Leites is, he's more Rafael Natal and Bruno Santos than Rafael Natal and Bruno Santos could ever hope to be. Even if he's not Jacare. So it's I don't know, because this is tough for me because I really do want to pick Camozzi here, and I think he's improved enough that I feel like I will. I'm picking him because I've seen the improvement happen with Camozzi's style, like especially his fight against Vitor Miranda. Not that Miranda fights like Thales Leites at all, but I just feel like that was a fight where we really saw Chris Camozzi just take apart Vitor Miranda. Like, Miranda had no moments in that fight, and it was by far the best that Chris Camozzi has looked in my eyes against a decent opponent.
The most consistent, which is what you need. Like, to have a style like Chris Camozzi's, he has a ton of split decisions, and it's because he can't put his stamp on fights. And to win with that style, you need to be very consistent. You need to put out a certain number of punches every minute without fail. You need to be hard to hit. You need to move more than the other guy at all times. And he did that better than ever against Miranda, against a really dangerous striker. Like, he mostly struck with Miranda with a few well-timed takedowns to seal rounds, and he won every phase.
Yeah. So I'm kind of banking on that version of Camozzi showing up, and I'm banking on Thales Leites getting stuck shooting for bad takedowns because of it. And that, I think, is more the key than Camozzi necessarily being great at keeping people off him or showing great takedown defense, is if he can force Leites into bad takedowns like we saw as the Michael Bisping fight got later. And I don't even remember the Gegard Mousasi fight at this point. But
it was essentially a rerun of Rory McDonald versus Jake Ellenberger.
Yeah. And so if Camozzi can force that game out of Leites, then I think he can beat Leites. If Leites comes out there, starts confident, and just bullies Camozzi quickly and dynamically, just like charge in, land a big shot, start going for takedowns, and really work him into the mat, then Leites has a path towards victory. But the whole but Camozzi's gonna keep coming on strong like every round. So I don't know. I'm picking Camozzi, but I see both sides of this where Leites has a clear path to victory, but it's not the path that got him past. It's not the path that's got him his recent wins. It's not the path that beat Tim Boetsch. It's not the path that beat Francis Carmont. It's not the path that beat Trevor Smith, because he's probably not going to knock Chris Camozzi out.
Mm-hmm.
So odds on this, Thales Leites is the favorite, -157 to -185. Chris Camozzi, the underdog, +140 or +150 down to +135. This feels like I don't know. This feels like too much of a toss-up fight for me to accurately read where odds should be, even if we're both picking Camozzi.
I'm betting on Camozzi, Zane. You damn know I am.
I know you are. I know you're betting on Camozzi. I know you think that's smart. I want to think that's smart very badly. I just... you know what's really sticking in my mind? Chris Camozzi versus Tom Watson. Where... yeah, he beat Tom Watson, but that fight was still ugly as hell.
It's Tom Watson, though, man. That's Tom Watson's whole thing. His whole career has been making people have ugly fights with him.
I know.
Winning half of them. That's Tom Watson.
It is. It sticks. It makes me really question, too, whether, if there's just this athleticism plateau for Camozzi, what side of the athleticism plateau Vitor Miranda and Thales Leites fall on? Are they the same side? Or is Leites that step ahead, a step further?
That's a good question. I think they may be close enough to the same side that Miranda's vastly superior technique makes up the difference as far as striking goes.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a good question.
It is. That's where I'm really stuck. Because just Rafael Natal and Tom Watson are fucking this up for me.
Dude, Rafael Natal is also on a winning streak, isn't he?
He is. Natal is a tough dude. Natal is a dude who will always be underrated.
Natal and Camozzi need to have a series.
They do.
They need to just keep fighting each other as both of them consistently improve. But that's middleweight. I said that in the League of Extraordinary Journeymen piece. I said middleweight is a division where the dogs have their days because the dogs are just nipping at each other constantly. And then occasionally you get a Michael Bisping. You get a Wolf that the dog manages to beat him. So that's why I like it. Natal and Camozzi are the guys who make each other better so that one of them can beat a guy like Thales Leites.
Yep. So I'm going to pick Chris Camozzi here too, but I feel so uncertain about it.
It's middleweight, man. You're supposed to feel uncertain.
You are. All right. Let's charge into this co-main event now. Dennis Bermudez versus Hani Jason. And this is a fight that Dennis
is happening.
Dennis Bermudez should really win this, but Dennis Bermudez is like, oh man, if ever there's a dude that can just lose. So there's this pack of guys in at like 15 to 20 in featherweight that's made up of like Godofredo Pepe, Hani Jason, Maximo Blanco, Sam Cecilia, formerly also who's the crazy pen stabby dude?
Diego Brandao. Probably Jeremy Stevens.
No, Jeremy Stevens is a firmly ranked top 15 dude.
He still feels like one of those guys to me, but I get
like one of those dudes, but he's a cut above. These dudes are all much closer to running like 4-4 over their UFC careers.
Yeah.
Hani Jason running a little higher than that, but mostly through dint of fighting a lot of lesser competition than the rest of those guys. You know, but he beat Sam Cecilia and Godofredo Pepe.
He beat two of the other guys in his crew.
Yeah, he beat two of the other guys in his crew.
And then he lost to Jeremy Stevens, so it perfectly delineates how this division is.
Yeah, and so Dennis Bermudez is better than those guys, but really not better by much. Like, Dennis Bermudez is a fantastic athlete, a great power wrestler, and he will just...
And technically a very good fighter.
But he will just throw anything whenever for the hell of it to see what sticks. And it makes for an awesome fight with, like, Jeremy Stevens. That is an all-time great, awesome war. It also means he drops around Tatsuya Kawajiri being like, fuck, I'll out-grapple you. You know?
Yeah, and damn near gets killed by, like, Matt Grice.
Yeah. And Hani Jason has the ability to absolutely kill Dennis Bermudez much more than Matt Grice did.
Sure.
Like, Hani Jason is not... He doesn't quite have... Like, it feels... Hani Jason is really coming into his own, technically. Like, he's hitting his peak, his prime. And it's as a good, solid power kickboxer with a submission game behind it, who is an exciting action fighter, but doesn't quite have the moment-to-moment, round-to-round consistency to win big fights. Dennis Bermudez should win this fight. I'm picking Hani Jason in an upset really quickly to get this done, because Dennis Bermudez makes too many of the mistakes that lets a guy like Hani Jason win, and Hani Jason is more powerful and dynamic with those mistakes than Tatsuya Kawajiri, Clay Guida, Jimmy Hedis, Steven Seiler, all the dudes that Dennis Bermudez has beaten recently. So I'm picking Hani Jason to get a big upset win here.
All right, I can dig it. I totally see where you're coming from. Dennis Bermudez, this is a dynamic versus process fight. Dennis Bermudez has an edge because he has both dynamic and has process, but his process is broken and he is fragile in a way that Hani Jason is not. So his strengths can be taken away from him in an instant because he tends to get hurt. I think I finally, while studying for this card, I finally was able to put my finger on what is wrong with Dennis Bermudez's game. And I think it is that he does not have any marriage between defense and offense. If Dennis Bermudez is being attacked, he's not super easy to hit. He's aware of what's happening, and he's not that easy to hurt. If Dennis Bermudez is attacking, he's very effective. His hands are good and quick. He throws really good combinations, moves from striking to clinch range. But if he is called on to defend something while attacking, he just doesn't. He gets hit, countered very easily. And if he's called on to surge when someone is pressing him, he can't do that either. And Bermudez, the former is a problem more for Bermudez than the latter, because he is married to volume and pace. His whole mindset is that he needs to go in there and break the other guy. He needs to push them. He needs to press the action. And so he is there to be hit. And more so than any other guy who I would say that about, he's there to be hit. You know, he's not just in the range. He is open at pretty much all times when he's attacking. And yeah, that makes it a tough one against Hani Jason. I do think Bermudez, better wrestler, better striker, Jason is like the probably tougher and as powerful, but he doesn't have the process, I think, to find those openings consistently. And Bermudez has been tagged, but he's tough. You know, he comes back, he recuperates pretty well. Bermudez to me is featherweight's Ryan Bader. He feels a lot worse than he is because we've seen him for such a long time. He's been here almost since the division first got started, and all of his losses have been really, really emphatic. They've all been almost embarrassing in how dramatically sudden they were that everything just goes away. But that doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. He has his flaws. So does Ryan Bader. But I still think Ronnie Jason should be the kind of guy that Dennis Bermudez beats. So I'm picking Bermudez. But I am excited that you went for the upset pick, and I could totally see it happening.
Yeah, I'm picking him by. I think really I'm picking Ronnie Jason by submission.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Could see it happening. Like Diego Brandao all over again. It could totally happen.
Yep. That Bermudez will be winning, doing well, will either get caught or will go for a takedown that he doesn't control and then get submitted. And that's where I see this. It's just Ronnie Jason is dangerous and has learned what to do with being dangerous over the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't shown up greatly, partially from a Robbie Peralta fight that he should have won, and Peralta just being like way tougher than he has any right to be. Mm-hmm. Often, especially at that time. Peralta's just kind of a weird, tough dude. And then that Damon Jackson fight, he just absolutely wrecked Jackson's world. Like, I think that Ronnie Jason's really figured out how to be a very dangerous fighter in small ways, and I think he's going to get this win. So, I every now and then I got to pick the puncher's chance, basically. Odds on this fight. Let's see. Ronnie Jason is the underdog, plus 211 down to plus 170. And Dennis Bermudez, the favorite, minus 220 to minus 245. And I think Ronnie Jason's worth an underdog bet there at like plus 211. Especially, let's see. Jason wins inside the distance at plus 295.
If he wins, he probably does. I was looking at not Jason by decision. It's minus 1050. I was like, I wonder what the odds are for that. Basically, everyone who makes betting lines acknowledges that Ronnie Jason is not taking a decision in this fight.
Yeah, and that to me is very certain as well. I would not pick Ronnie Jason by decision, but I just feel like Dennis Bermudez is the kind of fighter who's ripe for this kind of upset loss. And, you know, he almost took one against Kawajiri, and I think that Jason's not as technical, but Jason's more dynamic. Mm-hmm. More likely to jump on and finish that kind of opening. The other side of that, that brings us to the main event fight I'm super excited for. Yair Rodríguez versus Alex Caceres.
Is this me?
I think it is, because I believe I led off on the Jason.
I fully believe that a reckoning is in store for Yair Rodríguez someday soon. As I mentioned earlier, the submission wrestler who kicks is not a sustainable style. For Yair Rodríguez, he is extremely athletically gifted, and just has good fighting instincts, good sense of distance, and all of that. So he's been able to make this style work more than most would, and I suspect he will for some time. I don't think Caceres is likely the guy to beat him, but it is just not the having a style where you just kind of accept I'm not going to win at mid-range, which is where most of the action in most fights takes place, because most of your opponents are going to be trying to punch you. That's just not sustainable. We saw with Aljamain Sterling against Brian Caraway. We even saw some close calls from John Jones earlier in his career, like with Alexander Gustafsson, before he sharpened up his boxing. It's a hole you just can't afford to have. Punches are the most consistent offense from pretty much every fighter. It is extremely rare that a fighter throws more kicks than punches, but that's Yair Rodríguez. He's like the only guy I can think of who actually does it. Maybe John Jones, but with a lot less volume, and because guys just don't know how to get close to him because of his build.
And formerly Aljo.
Sure.
Very much that kind of dude.
Sure. And even those guys, like the margin's pretty close. They still throw a good amount of punches. And Yair Rodríguez hardly throws any. Even in his last fight, it looked like his boxing had almost gotten worse. In his fight with Andre Fili, he didn't box with him at all. He looked really uncomfortable when Fili was trying to punch him, and didn't even think to all right, put a jab in his face and then recreate the distance. It was just footwork and kicks and counter takedowns. I think that'll probably work against Caceres. Caceres is just too unreliable. Even he was on fire against Cole Miller. Granted, Cole Miller was suspiciously bad looking as well, but he was absolutely taking it to Cole Miller. And then he just about got finished in the third round. It was like, oh, Alex Caceres has arrived. He's fixed all of his. Oh no, he's losing the fight. It's you just can't count on him.
Yep.
Now, as he builds experience, as he's back in a division that probably suits him better, he's not having to suck himself dry to make the bantamweight limit anymore. Maybe that means that Caceres is going to have a breakthrough someday. But until I see it, I'm not going to be able to count on it. And as much as I think he's got some edges here because he throws good combinations and he can compete with Rodríguez better than most at kicking range, he's a good kicker, and he's good on the ground. He's a great scrambler and an opportunist. He just doesn't have the defense or the strategic consistency to press those advantages against Rodríguez, because Rodríguez is too athletic, too dynamic, and just too good at finding a way to win a fight. Now, it is very possible that Rodríguez is not cut out for 5-round fights with this style. Even an athlete as incredible as he is, throwing nothing but jumping kicks and shooting for explosive takedowns there's a reason you have to be athletic to make that style work. It's so taxing. And so we saw that again with Aljamain Sterling. He really had trouble with Caraway just because Caraway didn't even put that much pressure on him. Sterling just couldn't keep up his style for 3 rounds. And in a 5-rounder with Alex Caceres, there is a window there for Caceres to take over. But I think most likely Rodríguez gets him out of there before that. I think just before he starts to tire, he probably finds a knockdown into a submission in round 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's the other thing here is it's not like Caceres is unhurtable. You know, Caceres is he's a dude that can be finished. He's a dude that can be stung. He's only been knocked out once. That was pretty emphatically by Francisco Rivera. Obviously, Rivera hits really hard.
But he has been badly hurt in many fights. Kanehara badly hurt him. I think Uriah Faber stung him a few times. Yeah,
it's just I will say I could see it being the first point of Rodríguez's reckoning with that being a title fight, honestly. I could see it taking that.
Depends on who he fights getting there, yeah.
Depending on who he fights getting there. And even then, he's such a ridiculous athlete. It could just be flashy jumping switch kicks all the way to a title shot, and then suddenly it's that you weren't quite ready. I'm still really hyped on Rodríguez just because I think that if nothing else, I'm really heartened by the amount of time he seems to be putting into his wrestling, even if it's not going into his boxing yet. Him having an explosive power takedown game, because most of the guys who have this outside kicking to wrestle grappling game, one of the big flaws missing from their game ends up being they're not explosive takedown artists. Most of them tend to be. It's a game that's really kind of built around being not very athletic, frankly. It's I'm going to kick a lot from outside because I don't really want to I don't really have the speed and athleticism to mix it up safely in the pocket.
And then I'm going to smother you in close.
Yeah, and then I'm going to smother you in close because I don't have the athleticism to build the power takedown game off my boxing. Whereas Rodríguez, it's you have this ridiculously hyper-athletic kicking game, and then you're adding to it a hyper-athletic power takedown game, and it's really strange because
and
it also
grappling as well.
It's very good, dangerous grappling, and it's strange too because it forces fighters to close distance on him in a way that sets them up to be really perfectly taken down. Because a lot of the reason that style doesn't work for a lot of fighters is that they're unable to lure their opponents. They don't have the dynamism in their kicking game to force opponents to actually have to close distance.
Mm-hmm.
Guys are like, okay, I'll just sit out here and let you throw kicks you can't land for 5 minutes, and then you're going to have to shoot from 15 feet away because you're unwilling to close the distance. Whereas with Rodríguez's style, guys actively have to try to march him down to prevent him from kicking them apart. And when they do that, that sets him up for a big takedown.
You know, the more we talk about this, something's telling me that we're going to see like a round where Rodríguez looks bad in this fight.
Could be.
I think it might actually happen.
I don't know. I kind of feel like this is one of those fights where it will just end up being really not competitive in a way that people didn't expect. Like the Feely fight. People expected that to be like, oh, this is going to be a real test. Feely's a really tough guy. This is going to make this hard on him. And Rodríguez just walked through him.
True.
So I kind of have that feeling off this too. Odds on this fight, Rodríguez is the favorite -278 to -302 or 303. Oh, even 310. I'm even 315. I really need to read better. I'm having a little trouble. So -278 to -315. Caceres, the underdog, +263 down to +210, and I am sure of that number. And I'm pretty comfortable with that. I'm actually surprised it's not bigger.
Even so, I don't think I would bet on Rodríguez at those odds.
I would. I don't know. I just Caceres looked so good and then so bad in that Cole Miller fight. Like, I really feel like that was almost entirely. I don't know. I feel weird because going into that fight, I picked Cole Miller, but I was like, Alex Caceres, if I trusted him, he has the perfect striking style to just eat, to take Cole Miller's lunch money.
If you trusted Alex Caceres, he has a style to win a lot of fights. The guy had a close fight with Uriah Faber, but like you just cannot rely on him.
No, you cannot rely on him at all. And the guys that I don't know, like I don't see a Sergio Pettis like win coming out of this at any stage.
For me, the bets that I have in this card, I've got Chris Camozzi. I got him at +160. The odds are kind of narrowing now, so it may not be that like getting him really close to +100 is probably not that great.
It's +150 right now, so.
I got Zach Cummings +145 when I placed that bet. He's still around that region, so I would say go for Zach Cummings. I think we're both pretty confident he's going to win. And then I bet on Joe Gigliotti to Trevor Smith to end in less than a round and a half at -125 because that just covers the odds in case Gigliotti shits the bed.
Yeah, I could see that. I can't remember of anything else that we thought on this card was really worth much. Maybe Dom Steele at like +190.
Oh, I got Dom Steele as an underdog too. Yeah. Sorry about that, but I also got that one.
So yeah, there are a few things floating out there worth a look. Maybe Hani Jason inside the distance. I like that fight for him personally. I think Dennis Bermudez is very beatable. But
I wouldn't bet on it, but I wouldn't bet either way on that one. So
yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think Hani Jason's up around 211 for a fight that could be a coin flip. That to me feels like something. Anyway, maybe it's not. I don't bet, so I don't ever have to take these risks. So I don't give a shit. On that note, it's time to wrap up the show. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. That's BUSCH. You can find both of us over on bloodyelbow.com and give this video a like on YouTube. That's the thumbs up thing. That helps us a bunch. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com. That's DOTCOM over on YouTube. That way you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, analysis, all that good stuff. We got the week off next week, but after that, we'll be gearing up for UFC 202, and we can be sure that we'll have everything that you need to hear about those fights and that card. Till then, Stay tuned for our regular shows next week. Knuckle Up. If I did it, Prospectus. Maybe we might actually take the week off on Prospectus. But all our good stuff. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.